So the latest chapter for the Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis campaign, the first soldier, was just teased, and it looks like they're going to be introducing Angeal and focusing on the relationship between him and Sephiroth, and surprisingly, it's a bit of a cold one to start. So if any of that sounds cool to you, feel free to click the like button, and if you're new here and you just want to stick around and help support the channel, you can subscribe and comment as well. It is always greatly appreciated. So just to kind of recap and get people up to speed, some of you might be like, what is Ever Crisis? What is the first soldier? Why are we covering this? Why is it important? So Ever Crisis is this spin-off mobile game focusing on the world of Final Fantasy VII. There are a multitude of different campaigns that you can pick from to play through, and one of those campaigns is called The First Soldier. It focuses primarily on a young Sephiroth and his origins. It also has some other characters like Glenn, who we see in 7 Rebirth, but the primary focus here is young Sephiroth, and we're going to get to see how he becomes the war hero Sephiroth, which, you know, is cool in its own right. But what makes this even more exciting is that in the last few chapters, they revealed to us that Ever Crisis in this First Soldier story is actually linked to the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. At the very end of the previous chapter, we saw Sephiroth on the edge of creation, presumably the same Sephiroth we saw at the very end of 7 Remake on that edge of creation, who is reaching out to Cloud to form some sort of alliance for maybe a bigger threat. So with the reveal that this story is connecting to the 7 Remake trilogy, it's almost going to act as a bridge between 7 Rebirth and 7 Remake Part 3, because it's going to be a while before Remake Part 3 comes out, and this is pretty much going to be one of the only consistent sources of information for this story and the world building, and to try and figure out what the heck is Sephiroth's motivation in the Remake trilogy, and how many Sephiroths are there. And this next chapter in the First Soldier story will land on October 16th, which, funny enough, is actually my birthday, so we'll get some more Sephiroth stuff on my birthday that we can dissect here on the channel to figure out what the heck is going on with Sephiroth. What is eating young Sephiroth grape, so to speak? So it's pretty exciting. So we're going to take a quick look at the teaser that was just revealed, and this one is going to be focusing on an investigation in Wutai for Sephiroth and Angeal. There's some sort of great power there, this mystery that Shinra wants investigated, so they send Sephiroth and Angeal to check things out. And what's interesting is that this is the beginning of the relationship for these characters. This is the first time that they're ever going to meet, and I'm really excited to see Angeal and what they do with his character. Again, I wasn't the craziest about Angeal in Crisis Core. I kind of felt like he was a bit one note, a bit cardboard-ish to a degree, and he was just kind of there as a mentor figure for Zack to pass on that Buster Sword. But now, in Ever Crisis, they can do so much more with the writing and really flesh out these characters to hopefully make them more dynamic. And based on what I saw in this trailer, Angeal is already so much more charismatic and seemingly a little bit more fun, while also a little serious, and he kind of looks like a younger version of Zack, which is kind of eerie, and I'm pretty sure they did that on purpose because of how linked together those characters are. But funny enough, the reception from Sephiroth is very cold. There seems to be some sort of animosity there from Sephiroth to Angeal, and he just straight up tells Angeal, look, we are two very different people raised in two very different worlds. We're just never going to see eye to eye. So depending on what happens in this story, there's going to be a lot of pushback probably between Angeal and Sephiroth. They even showcase a couple of scenes where seemingly there was a monster attack that Angeal handled that Sephiroth didn't even step in to help. And he confronts Sephiroth like, why didn't you help? It's going to be interesting to see how these two kind of butt heads together, but also to see what eventually leads them to become such close friends. Is there something in particular in Wutai that happens that would trigger them to really trust one another and be okay with not just being friends, but, you know, actual co-workers out on the battlefield? We do get some bits of Angeal in battle as well. Of course, he's got the very pristine Buster Sword on his back that he is not going to use until we get to Crisis Core and the time calls for it, but he's going to be using his regular standard issue sword from Shinra. And we also get some dialogue from Angeal, specifically speaking to who I assume is Sephiroth, basically telling him, like, no matter who it is or what you're going through, you just gotta push through it. I don't care who you are, what you did, where you're from, as long as you love me. So I think Angeal is going to eventually break down these walls that Sephiroth has raised around himself and eventually, you know, befriend this character, because at this point in time, Sephiroth is kind of not necessarily antisocial, but he's just kind of weird because all he really knows is Shinra and Hojo and the things that Hojo has told him. And the last attempt that Sephiroth made to get close to somebody that was his age was Rosen, and he eventually had to kill Rosen, not out of malice, but because Rosen wanted it. He essentially wanted a mercy kill. So that's still lingering with Sephiroth. I think that's what is kind of creating a barrier, preventing him from allowing people to, you know, get in close and become friends. And we learn in previous chapters in this story that the manipulation from Hojo to Sephiroth has already started, and it's so cruel and twisted. And it starts with a locket that Hojo gives to young Sephiroth, and it's got a picture of a woman in it. As fans, we know that this woman is Lucrezia, the woman who is like the biological mom essentially to Sephiroth. But what Hojo tells Sephiroth is that, yeah, that woman in the locket, that's your mom, Genova. So right from the get-go, Sephiroth's mind and what he believes and who he thinks his mom is already a lie. It's twisted. So I think we're going to get even more stuff from Hojo and how he's basically molding Sephiroth into this super soldier of destruction, essentially, that he wants. And there might even be some conflict early on for Sephiroth in regards to Hojo, because we know later on, you know, Sephiroth is not a big fan of Hojo. He much preferred Professor Gast. So we're going to see those butting heads, I think, as well. And at the very end of this trailer, we see young Angeal introducing himself to a sleeping Sephiroth, just trying to, you know, get on his good side. And he's obviously very nice, almost like a goody two-shoes. He tells Sephiroth, like, you know, I'm a few years older than you, but I'm still a rookie. And Sephiroth is not having any of it. So it's kind of fun to see like this somewhat sassier side of Sephiroth, who's just like, oh my God, will you just like leave me alone? We're here to do a mission. I'm not your friend. I'm never going to be your friend. Let's just get this stuff done. Now, other than the first soldier stuff, I'm really excited to see if they show us any more of Sephiroth on the edge of creation. That version of Sephiroth, we don't really know who that version is that we see at the end of 7 Remake and some of the scenes in the first soldier stuff. There are most likely multiple Sephiroths running around in this 7 Remake story, so the one on the edge of creation could potentially be like a less evil version of Sephiroth. Maybe not necessarily a good guy, but someone who isn't as evil as the Sephiroth that we all know, because he is seemingly on the edge of creation. He might be trapped there for all we know. And he's reflecting on his life. He's reflecting on his younger self and how he got to the point that he's at now. And again, that speech that he gives the Cloud at the end of 7 Remake of like, you know, join with me, let us defy destiny together, is just so intriguing to me, because, you know, we've all kind of got our theories about Sephiroth and what he's doing, but this could potentially just be manipulation from that version of Sephiroth who wants to befriend Cloud, who wants his power and his strength to potentially get rid of an even bigger threat, which could be Genova for all we know. And they specifically focus in previous chapters on Sephiroth really reflecting on what they're doing. It flashes back to Wu Tai and essentially when Sephiroth becomes this war hero by saving a bunch of Shinra soldiers. And there's a moment in that campaign where Sephiroth comes across 2 soldiers and he tells them, look, I don't want to fight you, but obviously these Wu-Taian soldiers are going to defend their home, so they fight to the death, and Sephiroth destroys them. And he has this moment of reflection where he's, you know, basically asking himself, like, what are we doing here? What is all of this for? It's just like a cycle of violence, I think, is how he describes it, and how, you know, will it ever end? And that, I think, does feed into Sephiroth's overall arc for the 7 Remake trilogy. This might just be a guy who deep down has lost so many people that he doesn't want to lose anymore, but perhaps the way he wants to go about preventing the loss of life could even create an even bigger loss of life. You know, it's kind of like the ends justify the means. We have to do some really awful stuff in order to get to the place where things could potentially be good. And then you've got perhaps the other Sephiroth who's like, you know what, I lose in every timeline that I'm in. I'm sick of it. I don't want that to happen anymore. I'm not going to accept my fate. So either way, this is super cool, really exciting, and I can't wait to see what story stuff unfolds for this next chapter of The First Soldier, focusing primarily on young Sephiroth. With that being said, that is the video. I am Curious Corduroy. Let me know in the comments down below, what are you guys expecting from this next chapter? Are you looking forward to the origins of the relationship between Sephiroth and Angeal? And what do you think is up with this Sephiroth we see on the edge of creation? Do you think he might be a good guy? Do you think he's a bad guy? And what do you think his plans are overall? And why do you think he needs Cloud's help? I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.